I'm Emily, 25 years old, and I live with my boyfriend Mike. Our relationship? Well, it's not exactly the whirlwind romance it used to be. We've been together since college, but lately, we argue a lot. I'm frustrated. No, more than frustrated. I'm hurt. Mike doesn't seem to care about the future, and he spends all his time playing video games late into the night while I'm left alone, in bed, trying to figure out where we went wrong. We've stopped talking about our relationship, about where it's headed. It's not that we don't care about each other, it's just that the effort to make things better has faded. And then there are my parents, Sue and George. They're everything Mike and I aren't. They've been happily married for over 30 years, still looking at each other with that same spark, still laughing at their inside jokes. I look at them and think, that's what I want. That's what love is supposed to look like. But with Mike? I know, deep down, I won't find that with him. Then, one evening, everything changed. Mike and I were arguing again. Over something as trivial as laundry. He promised he'd do it again. And, of course, he didn't. It was like déjà vu. Can't you just do one thing you said you'd do? I snapped. My patience had run out. It's just laundry, Em. It'll get done eventually, he muttered, barely glancing out from his computer. And that was it. No real resolution. Just another argument. Another piece of what was once us chipping away. I didn't know it then, but that argument would be the last normal one we'd have. Later that night, I sat in the back seat of my parents' car, trying to shake off the tension from the fight. Their conversation was comforting, though. They were celebrating another year of Mom's life, laughing, joking, sharing memories. Their joy was infectious, like a bubble of warmth I didn't even realize I needed. But then, in an instant, everything changed. A crash. The world went black. When I woke up, everything was different. The sterile smell of a hospital. The constant beep of machines. The doctor's words were blunt, cold, even. Your parents didn't make it. And then, the gut-wrenching possibility, I might never walk again. Suddenly, I was consumed by an overwhelming sense of isolation. Terrified. Lost. The future, once filled with potential, now felt like an unrecognizable, desolate void. I was alone. Then Mike walked into the room, and for the first time, I noticed how different everything felt. His usual bravado was gone. The usual confident Mike was replaced by someone else, someone quieter. Someone uncertain. He sat by my bed, his hand in mine, and said nothing for what felt like forever. His parents stood at the door, watching with concern. Em, he whispered, barely audible, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. I looked at him, unsure. Was this some kind of breakthrough? Or just more of the same? Yeah, thinking, I echoed, my voice flat. I didn't know where he was going with this. He sighed, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity one didn't quite understand. All of this, it's made me see how short life can be. His words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I don't want to wait for the perfect moment anymore. Because it might never come. I stared at him, my throat tight. What was he trying to say? And then, the words I never expected. Will you marry me, Emily? It felt like time stopped. The last thing I thought I'd hear, especially in this moment, was that question. I looked at him, searching for the familiar, impulsive Mike, the one who acted first and thought later. But there was none of that. What I saw in his eyes was pure sincerity. Before I could say anything, his mother, Janet, stepped forward, her hands clasped together. We want you to be part of our family, Emily. "We'll take care of you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It's not out of pity," Mike's father, Bob, added quickly. "It's because we love you, and we want to support Mike in this step." I was speechless, my mind racing. It was all too much, too soon, maybe even reckless. But in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. A lifeline I never expected. I looked at Mike again. Really looked at him. This wasn't the boyfriend I knew. This was a man, standing in front of me, offering me support when everything else seemed to be falling apart. I don't know what to say," I began, my voice faltering. But Mike, ever patient, squeezed my hand. "It's okay, Em. You don't have to decide right now," he said, rubbing soothing circles on the back of my hand. And then I thought of my parents, how they'd loved and supported me, no matter what. Wouldn't they want me to be loved, to be cared for? To have someone by my side, even in the toughest of times? "Yes," I said, the word coming out stronger than I felt. "Yes, I'll marry you." Mike's face lit up with the first real smile I'd seen in days. Janet let out a soft sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Even Bob's eyes welled up with tears. It was unexpected, yes. Reckless, maybe. But it was real. Moving into my parents' house with Mike should have been a fresh start, a new chapter. But instead, everywhere I looked, I saw memories of them. The house felt emptier than ever. I thought having Mike with me would fill those gaps, but it didn't. His presence didn't fill the space, it just made me more aware of what was missing. At first, Mike was attentive. Always checking in, making sure I had what I needed. But as time passed, he started spending more time in front of his computer. And me? I was still here, still trying to piece together what was left of my life. One evening, I found him in the kitchen, his face glued to the screen. "Mike, have you thought about looking for a new job? The bills are piling up, and the insurance won't cover everything." He didn't even look up. "I told you, Em. I'm taking care of you now. That's my job." I pushed back. "But I can take care of myself during the day. You don't need to be here all the time." Finally, he turned to face me, his expression irritated. "What do you want from me, Em? I'm here, aren't I?" I felt the sting of his words. Being here isn't the same as being present, Mike. I needed more than just a physical presence. I needed a partner, not a roommate. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Maybe I need more than this, too. Maybe I'm not cut out to be a nurse." His words hit me like a slap. I watched him storm out, slamming the door behind him. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. I was left alone, wondering how quickly our honeymoon period had ended. The vows we made. Did they still mean anything? The vows Mike and I had exchanged now felt like they belonged to another lifetime. The man who once promised to stand by my side, through sickness and health, now seemed like a stranger. Where was the Mike who used to hold me when things got tough? He was slipping away, and with each passing week, his absences grew longer, and the excuses grew weaker. He was either out with friends or immersed in a digital world that, somehow, never seemed to have room for me. I felt like I was fading into the background of his life, an obstacle he hadn't anticipated, a burden he was too tired to carry. One day, when the pain was unbearable and the house felt more like a prison than a home, I heard the front door open. Expecting Mike, I called out, "Is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," he replied, his voice distant. "I'm just grabbing a few things, then I'm heading out again." "Out with friends?" I asked, masking the hurt I could barely hold back. He paused, keys in hand, and sighed. I need some space, okay? It's not easy for me either, all this. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I know, I said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. I just thought we could maybe spend some time together, like we used to. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. Maybe when things settle down a bit. I gotta go. And just like that, he was gone again, leaving the house emptier than before. His absence wasn't just physical, it echoed through the empty rooms, filling every corner with silence. I felt it more with each passing day. The silence was haunting, like the ghost of a happier time that no longer existed. But it wasn't just Mike's absence that bothered me. No, it was the little things that started to go missing, the vase my mother had cherished, the painting that once hung proudly in the hallway. I noticed it when I wheeled myself into the living room one afternoon, trying to distract myself by reminiscing through old photo albums. But as my eyes scanned the room, something felt off. The familiar landscape painting was gone. Confusion furrowed my brow. Mike? I called, unsure of when he had taken it. There was no answer. The emptiness of the house seemed to answer me instead. Later, when Mike returned, I asked him, "Have you seen the landscape painting that used to be in the hallway?" He barely looked up from his phone. All that old thing? Yeah, it was getting dusty. Thought we could use the space for something else. His dismissive tone hit me like a cold wave. But it was my mom's favorite, I said, the unease creeping into my voice. We can get another painting, Em. It's no big deal. But it was a big deal. It was a piece of my life, a piece of my family, and he was treating it like it was worthless. And then it happened again. The items kept disappearing, things that had been in my family for years, irreplaceable treasures. One afternoon, I caught Janet, Mike's mom, in the act. She was bustling around the living room with a large black garbage bag. "Janet, what are you doing?" I demanded, my voice sharp with alarm. She froze, guilt flashing across her face. "Oh, just some spring cleaning, dear," she said, her tone too sweet. "This place is cluttered with so many old things. But those are my things." My heart pounded in my chest as the realization hit. They were taking my things, and they thought I wouldn't notice. From then on, I watched Janet like a hawk. Every time she visited, I kept a close eye on her, but the thefts became sneakier, more calculated. Every time I confronted Mike, I was met with reassurances. "They're just trying to help," he'd say. "They're decluttering. It's for you, really." But my gut told me something wasn't right. It wasn't just about the things, it was the principle behind it. But when I tried to talk to Mike, he shrugged it off. "You know, Mom's just trying to help," he said, his eyes still glued to his phone. "She's got a knack for this stuff." "Help?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. "By taking my parents' belongings?" His response was a sigh, a dismissal. "They think we should be looking forward, not backward. They're just trying to take some of the load off you." I wanted to scream, to rage against the violation, the disrespect, but I was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of questioning my own sanity. "This isn't what I want," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. Mike, ever the passive one, reached over and patted my hand, a gesture that felt more patronizing than comforting. "Try to get some sleep, Em. Things will look better in the morning." I couldn't take it anymore. I confided in Anna, my closest friend and a massage therapist who had been helping with my rehabilitation. Her visits were the only relief I had, a rare break from the emotional weight I carried. "Anna," I whispered as she worked on my sore muscles, "things are going missing around the house." And I can't shake the feeling that Mike and his parents are behind it. Anna paused, her hand stilling on my shoulders. Have you talked to Mike about this? She asked, concern furrowing her brow. But he just brushes it off, I explained, a hollow laugh escaping me. He says his parents are just helping by decluttering. But it's only my family's things that are disappearing. Anna's expression hardened. That doesn't sound right, Em. Do you want me to do something? Maybe come by more often, keep an eye out? A spark of determination lit up inside me. Could you help me set up some cameras? I don't know, record what's going on when I'm not in the room? Anna agreed without hesitation. The next day, she brought over some discreet recording devices, and we placed them in strategic spots around the house. It felt like something out of a spy movie. If I weren't so desperate for the truth, I might have laughed at the absurdity of it all. A few days later, Anna returned with the recordings. We sat down together, the tension palpable in the air, and pressed play. What came through the speakers chilled me to the core. The voices of Mike and his parents filled the room, their words cold and calculating. And once we get her committed, the house and everything in it will be ours, Mike's voice said, devoid of any emotion. Yeah, the place will sell for a fortune, and all those antiques, pure profit, his mother added greedily. We just need to make sure Emily doesn't catch on before we have everything in place, his father chimed in. Tears streamed down my face as their betrayal washed over me. These people, who I had once trusted, who had promised to care for me, were plotting against me. Anna squeezed my hand tightly, her voice laced with anger. We have to do something, Em. I wiped my eyes, my sorrow turning into steely resolve. We will, I said, my voice steady. I'm not going to let them get away with this. Listening to the recording, I tried to act normal, but every word they said, every smile they gave, felt like a lie. It was during breakfast that I noticed something was off, something I couldn't ignore. The usual noise of the city, the hum of traffic drifting in through the open window, was eerily absent. What was going on? I wheeled myself over to the window, only to find that the ramps that allowed me access to the garden, were gone. Gone! Gone? Mike! I called out, my voice trembling with panic. Where are the ramps? He entered the room, feigning ignorance. The ramps, he said, shrugging nonchalantly. Oh, they were looking a bit worn. Thought they needed fixing. I stared at him. The man I thought I knew. How could you not think to tell me? How am I supposed to get around now? His gaze was evasive as he shrugged again. I just thought you'd be safer inside for now, until we get new ones. Safer? Or trapped? The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharp and bitter. But he didn't respond. He simply turned, leaving me with that gut-wrenching mix of anger and helplessness swirling inside me. The room felt like it was spinning. Was this my life now? Later, when I asked Janet about it, she used syrupy sweetness with false concern. We're just looking out for you, dear. We wouldn't want you to have an accident. She touched my shoulder with a faint tenderness that made me pull away. The sting of their deceit was too much to bear. I didn't realize needing ramps qualified as a hazard, I replied, keeping my voice steady, though my insides were shaking. Janet's eyes hardened for just a moment before her practiced mask of sweetness returned. We're just trying to help, Emily. It's for the best. That night, the darkness in my room felt suffocating. Mike was out again, probably drowning his guilt in cheap beer and fleeting thrills. I reached for my phone, the screen a tiny beacon in the dark. I dialed the number Anna had given me for emergencies. Anna, I whispered when she picked up. They removed the ramp. I'm trapped in my own home. Her voice was firm, a lifeline in the sea I was drowning in. Hang tight, Em. I'm going to make some calls. We're going to sort this out. The next day, as I was in the kitchen, I heard the doorbell ring. My heart pounded as I maneuvered toward the entrance, desperate for some kind of change. And there they were, Anna, flanked by a man and a woman, both dressed in crisp suits and stern expressions. They were from a local disability rights organization, here to assess my living situation. And beside them was my lawyer, Mr. Hammond, holding a leather briefcase. Emily, Anna said, determination in her voice matching my own. We're here to make things right. Mr. Hammond stepped forward. We need to establish the facts first, Emily. I'll need to see the house and check against the inventory of your parents' belongings. As we moved through the house, the representatives from the service took notes, their disapproval clear. The missing ramps, the blatant disregard for my welfare, it was all there for them to see. Mike walked in just then, his face registering surprise. Em, what's going on? Who are these people? He asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, letting the full weight of my gaze settle on his shoulders. I'm taking back control, Mike. This is my lawyer, and these are advocates for people with disabilities. They're here to ensure my home is safe and that my rights are respected. Mike's face turned pale as he realized the gravity of the situation. Janet's voice trembled. Emily, darling, what is all this about? It's about my rights, my home, and the truth, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Mr. Hammond is here to confirm the inventory of my inheritance. Mr. Hammond opened his briefcase, pulling out documents and photographs. We have detailed records of all items bequeathed to Mrs. Harper. It seems several are missing. Bob's face turned a ghostly white. Now, Emily, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I replied, the recordings Anna had provided playing in my head. And I have more than just missing items to discuss. Mike's parents exchanged glances, the facade of the caring in-laws crumbling in front of me. Mike stood there, silent, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on him. Anna moved closer to me. We also have evidence of the conversations you've had regarding Emily's property and well-being. The advocates from the Disability Service spoke up. Removing access to the ramps is a direct violation of Mrs. Harper's rights. We'll be taking action. As Mr. Hammond laid out the evidence of their theft and their plans for my future, I saw the trap I had been caught in from the outside. But now, the tables had turned. I was no longer the victim in their game. I was the one calling the shots. Mike finally found his voice. Em, I can explain. I shook my head, cutting him off. Mike, I've heard enough. Janet started to cry, and Bob put his arm around her, but there was no comfort in Deceit. Not anymore. The day of the trial was the culmination of everything I had endured. The courtroom was dark, the air thick with tension. Mike and his parents sat on one side, looking nothing like the family that had once promised to care for me. On the other side, I sat with Anna beside me, and Mr. Hammond ready with his briefcase full of evidence. As the proceedings began, the judge looked down at us from his bench, his gaze lingering on me for a moment. We are here to examine the evidence regarding the allegations of theft and the premeditated exploitation of Emily Harper, he said. Mr. Hammond presented the recordings, the inventory discrepancies, and testimonies from the disability advocates. The evidence was damning, and Mike's family could do little but squirm under the weight of their deceit. Janet sobbed quietly, her sobs a soundtrack to the unraveling of their scheme. We never meant for things to go this far, she whispered when it was her turn to speak. The judge's voice was firm as he addressed them. You took advantage of a vulnerable person. There's no excuse for your actions. Mike stood, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Em. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at him, the history we shared flashing before my eyes. Sorry isn't enough, Mike. You chose this path. The gavel came down like the final word on the life I had once known. Mike and his parents were found guilty. Reparations were ordered, and they were to have no further contact with me. With the help of Anna and a dedicated team, I started physical therapy. Each small movement was a victory. Each step, a testament to my resilience. My legs, once lifeless, began to tingle with new strength. One day, as I managed to stand with the help of parallel bars, Anna cheered me on. Look at you, Em. You're doing it. The smile on my face was mirrored in her own. I am, aren't I? Joy bubbled up from a place I thought had been broken beyond repair. And so, I moved forward, one day at a time. The house, once a maelstrom of my past life, slowly transformed back into a home. A sanctuary where I healed and grew stronger.